Conference championship, bowl victory in dramatic fashion, and pretty much gave some big teams fits last season. That was the story of the 2014 Memphis Tigers. We bring in John Maddox of the Tigers Tonight podcast, break down the 15 squad that's going to be on the field in just a few weeks. John, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
All right, it's a really good football team, and one of the more memorable bowl victories coming out against BYU for a number of reasons. It was an exciting game. There's no question about that. But then the fight ensued, and that took on mythic proportions, Sports Center all over the place and so forth. So let's start with the offense, John. Paxton Lynch got a lot of playing time, was pretty much named the starter as a freshman a couple of years ago. So he's got much experience under his belt, really broke out last year at 3,000 yards passing, 22 TDs and 9 picks. Can he get any better than what he produced in 2014?
Well, I think so. I think that a couple things he can improve on. Number one, kind of the running thing here has always been his delivery is a little bit slow and a little bit over the top, and he needs to work on getting the ball out a little quicker. He can certainly improve on that. His decision-making has always been outstanding. One of the things that's been unique, and we'll get more into this later, about the Justin Fuente era, somebody posted on Twitter last week that between 2006 and 2012, Memphis had 17 guys play quarterback over that 6-year stretch. So for the first time in a long time, we've come into a season with there's no question that he's the best player on the team. He has done a great job of improving his decision-making. He's put on about 20 pounds. And I know that sounds like a lot for a quarterback, but he's 6'7", and I think he was playing about 212, 215 last year. Probably got room for another 10 or 12 pounds on his frame at least. And they want to use him more this year, as strange as this sounds, in the running game. He's a very effective runner. He was the second leading rusher in that Miami Beach Bowl, ended up with 38 yards for the Tigers, accounted for 35 touchdowns last year, which shattered the school record of 26. So he's got things he can work on, getting the ball out a little quicker, making a little better decisions down the field, and he's had a problem at times with fumbling. So it'll be interesting to see how the increased running plays into that as well.
So you still have Frazier at wide receiver coming off a 47-catch, 3-touchdown season, but you lose a lot there. Can you set us up at wide receiver and who we can expect to step up this fall?
Well, you've got guys like Roderick Proctor, who caught the winning touchdown in the Miami Beach Bowl. We also lose Keywan Malone. That's a huge loss. Joe Craig. But you've got guys also like Phil Mayhew coming back. And then the tight end position, Alan Cross is critical to this offense. So, we're not going to have any superstars. That's what, Coach Fuente talked about a couple weeks ago is, you're not going to, outside of Paxton, you're not really going to hear a lot of names catching the football, or you're going to hear a lot of names and nobody's really going to jump out. Mose Frazier is what every quarterback would love to have at any level. And that's a guy that if you need 8 yards, he's going to get you 8.5. If you need 14, he's going to get you 14.5. He's not a burner. He's not going to beat you down the side, but, he's that good possession receiver that's really going to help Paxton out, with Alan Cross and those guys late when we need a good gain. He's a guy that we know we can rely on and go to. A lot of freshmen, a lot of young guys. We'll be interested to see who really steps out of the pack this year to become that superstar wide receiver that we just don't have right now.
Hey, John, Brandon Hayes had a nice season at just about 1,000 yards out of the backfield. It appears as though you not only have depth with him gone, but you also have the right combination of depth where you've got the bruiser, you got the changeup back, you got speed to go to the outside. So you've got nice diversity back in the backfield.
Yeah, we've got a guy, we talked about the wide receivers a moment ago, a guy named Sam Kraft who played at Olive Branch High School just down the road. Last year when Brandon gets hurt before the Cincinnati game, we moved Sam to running back, and Sam proceeds to carry the ball 38 times for I think it was 143 yards and really helped us salt that game away. And then we've got Dorland Dorsey, as you mentioned, coming back off of an injury, who was probably the best running back on the team last year before he gets hurt. And then, as you mentioned, Jarvis Cooper, the big redshirt sophomore from West Memphis, Arkansas, just across the river. So, he's a guy that we can bring in. He's for NFL fans, he's probably a Leroy Horde type. He's going to get you 3, 4, 5 yards. Every time he touches the ball, it's just such a load to bring down. And, that's the nice luxury to have. We've got 6 or 7 guys listed at running back on the roster, and that includes Sam Kraft, who in high school played quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. So, we're going to be able this year, finally, probably for the first time really in the Justin Fuente era, as odd as this sounds, we're going to see the type of football he wants to play, which is, kind of a run first and then throw it over the top to beat you. And he hasn't really been able to do that. But I think this year, and then, Paxton's just going to be an extension of that running game. He's going to be able to do some zone read stuff and some speed option stuff that, we're going to be a difficult offense to stop running the ball. We're about to talk about the offensive line, I'm sure, next, and that's another strength. We return 5 of 6 starters. We lose Al Bond off that line, but, you've got Ryan Mack, the transfer from Louisville. So we're going to be a team that's going to run the ball and keep it away from you. And one example of that, going back to that Cincinnati game last year, we ended that game on a 20-play 76-yard drive that took 12 and a half minutes off the clock. That's any coach's dream, and that's who we really want to be. Is we want to be a team that holds the ball, runs the ball, and then throws it over the top to beat you.
Yeah, a lot of teams bring back skill position players that fans get all excited about because they see the big numbers that were produced, but they don't look at maybe 4 or 5 offensive linemen that are leaving that really open things up. So you allude to a good situation along the offensive front. So who do we need to get familiar with up front?
Well, I think that Ryan Mack is going to be the guy that, while he's not me giving anything, he's a transfer from Louisville. He's a high major player. I mean, he's a guy that's going to come in here and really make a difference. The offensive line's kind of the same thing. We'll probably, as the wideouts, we'll probably play 12, 13 guys along the line this year. So, it's one of those things. It's not the glamour position, as you said, but it's probably for what we do the most important position. And having that camaraderie together and having that, these 5 guys that played together and we're young a little bit up front, but, we rotate so many guys that and we'll get the defense in a second, even though we lose so many starters on the defensive side, it's not like we're going to roll guys out there who have never played before. So, this is where year 3, year 4 of the Justin Fuente plan kind of comes to fruition, where we can go 2 and 3 deep along the offensive line, and there may not be names anybody knows right now, but by the offensive line, that's one of those things you probably really don't want to know their name, because that means they're either holding or jumping off sides. So, just solid up front, no real superstars, just kind of, everybody brings their lunch pail and gets the job done.
So you mentioned the defense. And again, I think we're going in the direction of some hope here, despite all the losses on defense, losing 8 of 11 starters, because it sounds like the backups played significant roles. So it's one thing to turn it over to a backup who never saw the field. It's another thing when so many guys rotated in and out, is that it's just a depth chart number that you lost 8 guys. But it's a defense, as you well know, that was 11th in scoring in the country, giving up just about 19 points per game in an age when everybody's scoring 45 points per game. That's an impressive number. And this defensive end, the linebacker, Jackson Dillon, that you have back, seems to be one of the better players coming back in 2015.
Well, he is certainly going to be relied upon very heavily, I think, Mark, to kind of fill that leadership role that Martin Affetti is that's departed now, and Bobby McCain and those guys. That's my concern on the defensive side. I'm not concerned about guys like Donald Pennington and those guys. They can go out there and play. I don't worry about that. But I worry about the leadership that guys like Affetti and Bobby McCain brought to the table. And, it's going to be important for Big Donald Pennington to step up this year and take Terry Redden's spot. We lost a lot in the linebacking core. So, it's one of those things. Regis Ball comes back in the secondary, and he's the only returning starter. So we're just going to have to kind of wait and see who really steps up as that defensive leader. Probably, to me, honestly, the biggest loss on the defensive side of the ball is we lose Barry Odom, our defensive coordinator, who went back home to Missouri. Galen Scott, who's been on staff here, this is his second coaching. He was with Larry Porter as well, steps into that role. And even though the lingo is kind of the same, the coaching style is going to be a bit different. So, he's a more Galen's a more in-your-face kind of guy, more get after the guy. So, as far as being prepared and whatnot, I'm not concerned about. But again, I want to see if Jackson's a really quiet guy. He's not an in-your-face guy like Tank Jakes was last year, or Charles Harris, or Charles was not real loud, but he could get after you. Bobby would get after you. It's going to be interesting to see, can somebody along that defensive line, somebody like Donald Pennington, can he step up and really take that leadership role and say, hey, this is my team, and you've got to have that on defense just as well as offense, as I mean, you've got to have a guy that says, you know what, it's 3rd and 9 and we need to get off the field. I got to make a play. So that's who I'm waiting to see. It's kind of just like, the wide receivers. It's just a wait and see, and let's see who steps up.
And, of course, the guy who ended your season on a high note by nailing that 54-yarder, Jake Elliott, he's back for this season. So that's good news as well. John, it's a schedule where last year you gave Ole Miss all sorts of fits. Bo Wallace and company, Laquan Treadwell, with that defensive game planning and just sheer talent. That was an impressive showing on defense. Was it last year or the year before? I'm losing track, that you went out to the Rose Bowl and took UCLA to the wire.
Last year,
UCLA, that game.
Yeah, UCLA returns an interception, or we return an interception for a touchdown, I believe, with about 12 minutes to go, and kick the ball to UCLA, and we bust a coverage, and they score a touchdown and go up 45-38, and then neither team can really do anything after that. But we gave the Bruins all they wanted. That Ole Miss game, people look at that schedule and they go, oh, well, that was a 7-3 game, or that was a 24-3 loss. Well, people don't understand that was a 7-3 game in the fourth quarter, and Ole Miss's defense last year was just incredible. And the schedule last year, we did have one little benefit that people, I think, are they take lightly. We had the ability to sneak up on people last year. We were a good team. We knew we were good. We thought here probably 6-7 wins. I don't think any of us thought we would be as good as we were. But the bad thing about winning 10 games is you win 10 games, and now everybody kind of knows they have to take us seriously. They can't just, roll the ball out there and try to get it done. So this year's going to be a different challenge for us.
And if you're looking at Power 5 teams on the schedule, Kansas could possibly take you seriously, and you still win that game by double digits. So they're having all sorts of issues in Lawrence and rebuilding a football program there, which brings us to the rebuilding question about Justin Fuente's work there in Memphis. I covered the SEC while I worked in television in Mississippi and Alabama, and we all know what the talent is down there. When you look at a program like Memphis that's sitting right between Arkansas, now Missouri, obviously their footprint covers Memphis as well to a certain extent. Tennessee, Ole Miss, on and on and on. Where are these players coming from? What did Justin Fuente do in regards to building a program that's been so much different than any Memphis coach we've seen in ages?
Well, I think one of the things that Justin does is he takes the Gary Patterson TCU model, which, for those who don't know, Justin was the co-offensive coordinator at TCU before he came to Memphis, and that's, we're probably not going to get the 4- and 5-star guys. That's probably not who we are. And he said something last year that made a lot of sense in an interview. He said, thinking about the SEC, we're not going to be Coke or Pepsi, but we can be the best dang Sprite that you've ever tasted before. And that's kind of his things. He goes out and he gets guys that work hard, that buy in. Paxton Lynch, 6'7", probably a little too tall to play quarterback. Most people think that release was a little funky. Guys like Jarvis Cooper, a little short, a little on the heavy side. Mose Frazier, another guy, doesn't really have the measurables. And then what happens is, this is where the parity of everybody gets 85 scholarships comes into play. Dan Mullen, Hugh Freeze, Nick Saban, Gus Malzahn, they can only take so many guys. So what we have to do is go find maybe not the best player on that team, but the second best player that fits what we want to do. And I think that's what Justin has done better than any coach, even than Tommy. And we had a good stretch with Tommy West, 4 bowls in 5 years, but it was always like we had D'Angelo. We had a once-in-a-generation player, and we had a solid quarterback in Dane Wimprime, but we kind of had a hodgepodge of guys around him. Justin's building a program of guys that play the way he wants to play. And that, I think, is built for longer-term success. His first year, we went out, we got some JUCO help, we got some transfer help. But, he's done that. We're not really – I looked at the depth chart, and we're probably, if we can help it, not going to play more than 2 or 3 true freshmen. So, for a program like Memphis, that's critical, that we can redshirt guys and not have to throw guys to the wolves from a numbers perspective. So I think he just goes out and he's got a staff that, the big thing with his staff is, with the exception of Holloman Wiggins, the wide receiver coach, everybody on this staff has been a head coach or a coordinator at some level. And that, you can't, there's no replacing that. There's, guys that know how to lead and have, Daryl Dickey, our offensive coordinator, these are guys, Brent Guy, who's been a head coach and a defensive coordinator. So, that I think is the critical thing, is they just get out and they outwork everybody and they know their limits. And we're in with some big guys. We've been mentioned on the final list of 3 or 4 4-star and 1 5-star. So it's just about working hard and finding the right guys and building the Memphis brand. And I think that is what Justin has done probably better than any Memphis coach, is give us an identity and a brand to build.
Hey, John, before I let you go, Memphis is such an interesting place right there along the Mississippi River, at the edge of Tennessee, practically in Arkansas. What is the fan base, and how is that city split in regards to having Ole Miss right there, 45 minutes away, something in that range?
Yep.
I know Tennessee, the university is all the way across the state, but at the same time, it is Tennessee. You got Arkansas right there. Well, how is Memphis divided in terms of football loyalties? Do you have any guess on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's Memphis has always been a walk-up town and a winner town. And, there are Tennessee fans here. There are Ole Miss fans here. There are Arkansas fans here. But the approach the university has taken now is said, look, Tennessee, as you just said, is 7 hours away. Arkansas is 6 hours away. Ole Miss is 45 minutes. Starkville's a couple hours. Alabama is about 4 hours. So if you're not going to go to those games, come to our games. Be a fan of Memphis, and we're the hometown team. So, that number is disputed. I think there are probably more Tiger fans here. We've always had the split loyalties of, when Tiger basketball is excelling, then I'm a UT football fan and a Memphis basketball fan. That's by far probably the most common thing I see. But that 10-win season last year, and not just the 10 wins, the fact that people feel optimistic about Tiger football. Bobby Bowden said 40 years ago that this was a sleeping giant, that this program, if we could ever figure out how to win, would steal the heart of the city. And, that's kind of what's happening. This is a crucial season for a lot of reasons that we don't have time to get into here, with conference realignment and things like that. We just announced we start a $40 million capital campaign 2 years ago for athletics, for indoor practice facilities. We're $24 million. We're 2/3 of the way there. So it's a split city and it's a melting pot. But I think that when Memphis is winning, I think that some of these Arkansas and Ole Miss fans and Mississippi State fans become Memphis fans in a hurry.
Yeah, you mentioned something that gets just a tad under my skin when people split their college loyalties between football and basketball. Pick a school, root for them.
That's right.
All right, John Maddox from Tigers Tonight podcast. John, it was tremendous insight. This is the first time we've been able to get you on here, and excellent insight into Memphis football. It's very interesting.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it.